Welcome back. More turmoil for Tesla. This is big. The Securities and Exchange Commission is suing Elon Musk for fraud over his tweet about taking the company private at $420, funding secured. The case raising questions about executives using social media to get news out. Joining me right now is Steve Case. He is the chairman and CEO of Revolution, and he's the former CEO of AOL. Steve, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
We got a lot happening on Capitol Hill with some of your colleagues in the business speaking to lawmakers. But first, let me get your reaction to what's happening with Elon Musk and Tesla with this SEC lawsuit.
Well, Elon is obviously one of the great entrepreneurs of our generation. I have great respect for what he's been building with Tesla and SpaceX and so many other things. But I think, and I obviously support that CEOs should use social media, the internet, to reach out to customers and other constituencies and, kind of tell their stories. But I do think there's a number of examples now where maybe Elon, by his own admission, probably should get a little more sleep and probably should be a little more careful before he tweets.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of discussion this morning about what happens to Tesla if Elon Musk is not there. I mean, he's, being sued by the SEC. They're saying we are looking for him to not be able to serve as the CEO of a public company. Your thoughts on Tesla? Can it survive without Elon Musk?
Well, I'm sure it could. People said could Apple survive without Steve Jobs, but clearly Elon has been a key part of Tesla, so hopefully this is a bump in the road, and over time they'll resolve this issue, and Elon will be able to kind of focus on taking Tesla and some of his other companies to the next level.
All right, Steve, let me switch gears to ask you about Google on Capitol Hill today. Google CEO Sundar Pichai set to meet with top GOP lawmakers today. You know that this comes amid growing scrutiny against the company and many social media sites for alleged biased search results, violations of privacy, renewed relationship with China as it relates to Google specifically. I spoke with House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy on Tuesday. He'll be meeting with Pichai today. Here's what he told me.
And he is committed to coming to a hearing this year, which is a change of where Google has been. I'm concerned because 90% of all searches go through Google.
90%?
Yeah, and 95% of everybody drops off by that second page. So that first page matters a lot. There are real concerns, are the conservative voices being able to come across. And I think transparency is key.
What about that, Steve? Google is doing 90% of all search.
Obviously, it's been a huge success. We were early supporters when I was running AOL. We did a deal with Google at one point, owned about 5% of Google. When it was a little company, it was just Larry and Sergey and a few other people. Now it's 100,000 employees and has a huge impact, obviously, globally, both in terms of how people get information and also being a significant part of the advertising market. It's not surprising, therefore, that there's more scrutiny, more attention. I'm glad Google is going to be in Washington today to talk about what they're doing and think about what the role of these big platforms is in this age. It's not surprising that there's a little more of a backlash against big tech or a backlash against Silicon Valley. I predicted it almost 3 years ago. I wrote the book, The Third Wave, because as these platforms become bigger and have more impact, and in some cases, in the case of Facebook, maybe even influence the election, it's not surprising there's more scrutiny. I think there'll be more entrepreneurs in this third wave of the internet when you're dealing with healthcare and food and other smart cities. Policies are going to matter more. Regulations are going to matter more. So it's not just about the disruptive entrepreneurs focusing on technology in Silicon Valley. It's also engaging in a respectful and responsive way with the policymakers in Washington, Brussels, and other places.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And therein lies the problem, right? Because when you're talking about when you were an investor in Google, a small company, today, as you say, 100,000 employees, 90% of all search results. Do you feel a new tone in terms of the regulatory environment that we could see perhaps calls for this company to be broken up? Or is this sort of the regular way the pendulum swings, and you remember what happened with Microsoft when Microsoft was a real target because of its size and its influence? These companies are more powerful today than ever before.
No, they are very powerful. I was part of the whole Microsoft issue when I was running AOL, and some of the antitrust issues was even deposed in that trial when the government was basically challenging Microsoft. At the time, they had something like 95% market share in operating systems with Windows, and there was a concern by the government, which I shared, that they were doing some things that were not necessarily, kind of supportive of entrepreneurs and others in the ecosystem, that, in terms of what they wanted to do to innovate. Ultimately, that Microsoft decided to pull back, was a little bit more careful, kind of self-regulated. regulated, and I think that is the best approach for these big companies, not just Google, but other companies, Facebook and Amazon and so forth. But if they don't do that, there's no question that there'll be more scrutiny. I think there should be more scrutiny because these companies are playing not just a significant role in our lives, but having a significant influence on our economy.
That's right. And now let's look at the AT&T Time Warner merger. 9 state attorney generals are backing AT&T as the Justice Department seeks to reverse the approval of the company's $85.5 billion acquisition of Time Warner. Your take on this deal and its impact?
Well, obviously, I have some history with Time Warner since we merged AOL and Time Warner almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago. A lot has changed since, obviously. I think the strategic logic of the deal, if they can figure out a way to run it in a more integrated kind of way, kind of makes sense. I was a little surprised when the merger closed and then the government kind of filed this appeal. I think it's better if these things are resolved before things close as opposed to after things close. But we'll see how this plays out. Do you think they should allow this to go through? I think they probably should have decided earlier if they really were going to have concerns about it. I think once again, I don't know all the details. I've been focusing on working with entrepreneurs in the middle of the country, not on thinking about what Time Warner and AT&T should be doing in Washington, D.C. But it seemed like it should have been resolved earlier. Because you're leading the Rise of the Rest Summit. This is a nationwide effort to invest in entrepreneurship, help build businesses across the country. This is really an important part of the employment story in our country. Entrepreneurs and small business create the jobs. Tell us more about your effort. No, it's very exciting. We launched this Rise the Rest initiative over 4 years ago, but today we're in Chicago. Yesterday with 100 entrepreneurs from 50 different cities that are doing amazing things in sectors all across the economy. We brought them all together to share perspective of half a dozen of our investors that are partners, LPs in the Rise the Rest Fund, including Eric Schmidt and the venture capitalist Jim Breyer from Silicon Valley, Dan Gilbert from Detroit, Ted Leonsis from D.C., Brad Keywell from here in Chicago. We're all sharing their perspectives on scaling companies. We really believe the next wave of entrepreneurship is not going to just happen on the coast. It's going to happen all across the country. And as you said, that's critical because the big job creators in our country are the young, high-growth startups. And if we're only backing the startups on the coast, last year 75% of venture capital went to 3 states, California, New York, and Massachusetts. Wow. So the other 47 states fight over 25%. Some big states like Ohio and Pennsylvania, Michigan get less than 1%. So we need to back the entrepreneurs there, creating the jobs there to offset the disruption of technology that's happening on the coast, which will continue to happen with AI, robotics, driverless trucks that are going to destroy jobs in the middle of the country. We don't offset that, at least in part, by backing the entrepreneurs in the middle of the country to create jobs in the middle of the country. Some of the challenges we have right now, including on the political front, are going to worsen. There are a lot of people in this country, the majority of the country by some estimates, are anxious and fearful of the future. They don't view innovation as a good thing or disruption as a good thing. They view it as a bad thing that's going to end up potentially destroying their job or their community. So we need to make sure we understand that startups play a critical role. We need to level the playing field so everybody everywhere really has a shot at the American dream, and we're creating jobs all across the country, not just on the coast. You're right. So did you say 3 states get the majority of what? Private equity? 75% venture capital. So if you look at the venture capital dollars, according to the NVCA, the Venture Capital Association, last year 75% went to just 3 states. It's actually worse if you look at some other statistics. Over 90% of venture capital last year went to men, less than 10% to women. So we have some work to do to make sure we're backing every entrepreneur everywhere. That's what Rise the Rest is all about. And these 100 entrepreneurs, it was really gratifying, exciting to hear their stories yesterday when there's all this partisanship and all this challenges in the country. The entrepreneurs are going to lead the way forward.